In 2007, the mecca of hipster paradise was the Etsy headquarters in Brooklyn. Outside the warehouse, a collection of fixed-speed bikes were locked to the bike racks as 20-somethings in fedoras and belted dresses poured into the front doors. Etsy epitomized elder-millennial quirk with a sprinkle of digital delusion, and no one personified the vibes quite like their CEO and founder, Rob Kalin. Kalin built Etsy to recreate the artist colony that he grew up in. He put his cooperative artisanal marketplace on the internet so everyone could have an opportunity to make money from their handicrafts. Etsy was a late-aughts utopia. Twee girls and bohemians in shutter shades, casually trying to elevate the world's consciousness by creating their version of the online Athenian agora. Hey, pass the matcha. But what these Williamsburg idealists don't know at the time was that across the river in an underground lair, venture capitalist Fred Wilson was watching their every move. Oh, they're so perfect, so unspoiled and naive. Everyone loves Etsy. It's eccentric, humanitarian, and trendy. Etsy is just the vessel I need, and they'll never see it coming. Ryder, bring me my BlackBerry and get me a matcha. Hey, Rob. Hey, Rob. This is Fred Wilson over at Union Square Capital. Hey, listen. I know there's a lot of other firms offering to invest in Etsy right now, but they're offering what? $5 million for 20%? I've been watching what you're doing over there, and I really believe in you, buddy. And I'm willing to give you $5 million for 5%. Yeah, totally. We'll let you do your thing, man. I love your mission, like making the world a better place. I'm right there with you. Oh, you're interested. Great. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Okay. That was easy. Ryder, check ingratiate myself with the leader off the list. God, these kids are so stupid. I'll fatten this company up real good and then pop. Once we IPO, I'll be filthy stinking rich. I'll get my buddies in the top job. We'll strip this thing for parts before these state school indie kids ever know what hit them. Ah, this is matcha? Tastes like butthole. Gross. Ryder, get me a chocolate milk on the rocks. I have business to do. This is the Corporate Gossip Podcast. Etsy, Hipster Bambi versus VC villains.
Speed!
Welcome back to the Corporate Gossip Podcast. I'm your host, CPA Scorned, Becca Platsky. I'm here with my brother, my co-host,
Reformed data analytics playboy Adam Platsky.
I was almost going to call myself unemployed CPA. All right, you ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Now that I've bared my soul, you ready to dive into Etsy?
I mean, this is the equivalent of Kyle giving us all of the Morris drama, right? You're bearing your soul. You're giving it all to the viewers. We don't take our viewers as idiots.
No.
We don't try and hide things.
No. And I'll tell you if I end up hooking up with a country music star. Okay, so this is Etsy's journey from do-gooder artisanal marketplace to the bottom of dropship garbage mountain. I love this story so much, and I'm happy we get to do it in the same season we're doing Match Group and eBay, because they're both like long-term case studies for what happens when you take like a perfectly good, adorably optimistic Silicon Valley startup with an innovative and quirky culture, and you get all these investors and capitalists who say, you have to scale. Scale now. And they systematically destroy everything that made these companies unique and special and valuable. And so what you end up with on the other side is a deeply unsatisfactory product that has grown so large that it's a marketplace monopoly, and everybody who uses it hates it. It's also like a funny story about MBAs who have like chronic and pervasive attribution bias, where they think that positive results are only a result of their own decisions and negative outcomes are only the result of legacy decisions before they got there or external factors outside of their control. It's this fear that is immediately injected into the veins of these companies the second they go public. These CEOs are basically told by investors, you cannot make a mistake or you're out, which in and of itself, I think is counterproductive. And I think one of the reasons that we need to get rid of quarterly earnings, but that's for another time, because these CEOs, they're put on a pedestal. They have to spend their days massaging numbers. We know about the fraud triangle, right? Like pressure is a huge element of making shitty decisions. They have to prove that every single thing they did was the right decision, or they have to find somebody to throw under the bus. And for some reason, these CEOs live in a world where they don't make mistakes. The rest of us, we make mistakes, we move on, we learn from them, but not Etsy. They learn nothing. What's your
relationship with Etsy?
What's your relationship with Etsy?
Yeah, I used some things off Etsy not too long ago. I bought a bed frame, which I thought was artisanally crafted, and then it showed up and it had Japanese writing on the box. It's a really great bed frame, but it wasn't handmade. It wasn't
solid wood.
Yeah, and then I bought a bookshelf, which I gave to you. Not a shelf, an entry shelf. It's got the magnets, wood. Yeah.
We have that in our. I didn't know that.
Also, not handcrafted.
That's interesting. So you were under the impression that what you were buying from Etsy was artisanally made by a handicrafter. Yeah,
because I found that a lot of furniture. I was looking for furniture for my apartment, and a lot of furniture these days is manufactured wood, I think it's called, and it's basically
like particle board.
Yeah, particle board with veneer.
Yeah.
And it costs thousands of dollars. So what I was trying to do was find pieces that were like actually wood, and that's really hard to find. But Etsy, allegedly. Say what you will. Yeah. I mean, my bed frame's wood.
Oh, it is. But
yeah.
It just wasn't handcrafted.
It wasn't handcrafted.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Yeah.
I have not shopped in Etsy in years. Like, I remember back in probably the early 2000s, I would buy things on Etsy, unique things for my house or, prints or whatever. But it's not a place that I go. Like the last time I went there, I remember the user interface was just like way overwhelming. It really felt like very Amazon-y to me. And I just have much better time like going to crafts fairs and, even though those have changed too, but going thrifting and stuff like that, like that's a fun activity for me. So it's not something that I like. But yeah, I mean, the current state of Etsy is bleak in terms of financials, in terms of outlooks. Their trajectory is actually very similar. If you look at, we're going to show the stock market price chart over the max time frame. It's very similar to another company that we've covered on the podcast, Peloton. They're a relatively weak, low growth company before the pandemic. They had private equity circling them. People who use the product are getting a little bit frustrated. Employees were angry because their, CEO was unceremoniously shit-canned. And then the pandemic hit, and they were in the right place at the right time. Scales skyrocketed, and everyone said, just like Peloton, we expect these trends to last forever. And as I was alluding to, you had this MBA-type CEO who was deposited into the company, and we'll introduce him. And, he's saying, this growth is because of the cost-cutting and growth measures that I implemented. At some point during the pandemic, Etsy is valued at $28 billion. Okay? Why the fuck was an e-commerce website valued at $28 billion?
An e-commerce website that doesn't own any of its inventory?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to know other companies that are valued around $28 billion?
Sure.
Kia. They make cars. Kellogg's. They have like a shit ton of factories where they make a ton of food.
Yeah.
H&M. They have probably more inventory than anybody else on the face of the planet. And Halliburton. All of these companies have what's called property, plant, and equipment. It's PPE for all my little accountants out there. And actual assets. A website should not be valuable as a car company. You're delusional. And so when the pandemic is over and the balloon deflated and the executives were like, it turns out my calculations were incorrect, and the stock price just plummets. At the end of 2021, as I mentioned, $28 billion valuation. Right now it's worth $6 billion. What's that? 80% drop in value. And that makes investors really sour on Etsy. And it creates pressure on these executives, right? They're just like us. When I'm under pressure, when I feel like people are going to be mad at me, I make dumb, desperate decisions. It happened at eBay, and that's exactly where we're at in Etsy. And we got a lot of duds in this story. There's a lot of classic NBA numbskulls. But there's also a lot of really earnest characters that will give you some hope, including a recently unionized group of sellers and the founder of the company, Robert Kalin. Hey guys, just a quick interruption so I can talk about the Corporate Gossip Patreon. If you want even more juicy corporate gossip, make sure you go over to patreon.com/corporate gossip. We post extra content there that didn't make the cut on the main feed, plus bonus episodes twice a month, sometimes more, where we talk about hot topics. Over the past few weeks, I've been going down to Lower Manhattan to attend the trial of Charlie Javice and reporting from inside the courtroom, including some extremely detailed and realistic courtroom drawings. Corporate Gossip is made possible by support from listeners like you. As of now, we have no sponsors or advertisers. If you don't want to join the Patreon but still want to support the podcast, just rate and review us and share this podcast with a friend. Okay, back to the show. So you ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Okay, corporate gossip number one is a little doe emerges from the woods and starts a multi-million-dollar company. So I need to show you one of the only pictures available on Getty Images of Robert Kalin 3 years after Etsy was founded. Here he is in 2008. He looks like a woodland nymph.
Yeah, woodland nymph. That's a good description, like from Narnia. From Narnia. But also cosplaying a fashion designer from America's Next Fashion.
Yes. He's wearing what looks like what's the Cookie Monster outfit?
A Cookie Monster.
So he's wearing like a sweatshirt that's made of blue and pink fur, but the arms are just like some type of synthetic, like polyester. He clearly has made that himself. And he just looks like a little cute nerd.
Beautiful hair.
He's incredibly pale, great red hair, piercing brown eyes. I don't know how to describe it. He's so pale that his brown eyes just kind of pop out. He needs to really collaborate with Wyatt Ingraham Koch, don't you think?
Yeah, they could be brothers.
And then I also put a picture of him with a young Mark Zuckerberg and a young Bill Gates, and I think that they are long lost triplets. Like there's something about a little boy founder.
They're so pale.
They're so pale.
Well, when Bill Gates is the most has the deepest skin tone.
Yeah. And is the most fuckable.
Yeah.
So here's another picture of Robert Kalin. This is the picture that he uses for like his standard headshots when he's doing press at Etsy. And the foreground of this picture is normal. He's in like a nice blue V-neck with a yellow t-shirt underneath, and he's smizing. But he looks like he's been kidnapped. This picture, the lighting is amazing, but he's in a staircase in an abandoned warehouse.
Smile, Robert. This is going to your mother. We're going to cut off your pinky if you don't.
Seriously. He looks like he's like actually kind of happy to be kidnapped. So this is Robert Kalin, right? He founded Etsy when he's 24 years old with a couple of buddies. His early life is actually pretty rough. He grows up in Boston. He left home when he was 16. He describes his life at the time as pretty miserable. His parents are divorcing. He's bullied badly in school. He moves actually into an artist squatting house with an uncle of his. It sounds like something out of a memoir, but he ends up finishing school. He's got a 1.7 GPA. He moves to New York City, where he made a fake student ID and a letter of recommendation from a professor that he met there to get himself admitted to NYU. This is like from 1935 shit. Like, I love it. So he meets these two buddies at NYU, and he has this idea. You know, he's spent most of his youth in a artist squat house, like surrounded by people who spend their days making art. And so he has that idea in his head, and he comes up with the idea for an online craft fair. And Etsy is born in 2004. There's this new New York Times profile on Kalin called Handmade 2.0 that's published in 2007 when Etsy has 50 employees and some small investors like the, remember the picture website
Before
Flickr?
my time.
Oh, you never used Flickr?
No.
Or like Photo Bucket?
Photo Bucket, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he's talking in this interview about the personal experience of buying something from a person who made it. And beyond that, he's just like a little dreamy, artistic 24-year-old with a classics degree. Fun fact, Kalin and his roommates started Etsy out of their apartment in Brooklyn, and their landlord was the owner of Acme.
Oh, wow.
Of We Met at Acme?
We Met at Acme. Have you ever been?
Yeah. No.
No. Well, I'm sure I would have had the opportunity, but I gave up on those crowds, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You don't strike me as the Acme crowd. You strike me as the meet me out back of Sweet Afton by the stairs in Astoria, Queens crowd.
Hey, that's a deep cut. I do love me some back alley
Sucking
Sweet
faces,
Afton.
Sweet Aftons.
So his first idea is to start these co-production facilities. And his idea is that a bunch of crafters are going to come together in like a co-op model. It would be in a space in a distressed area, and they would offer training to people who would want to learn how to handicraft. So basically it's like, where I lived when I was 16, I want everybody to experience that. And I also want to offer training.
What do you think if you were a crafter, what would be your craft?
Balloon animals.
Balloon animals,
Yeah,
that's right.
That's something that actually I can do.
Nice.
I can do dog, sword, I can do hat, and if you give me a lot of time, and if you're patient with me, I can make a flower.
Okay, cool.
What about you?
Ski wine racks.
I have one of Adam's. Adam made me a ski wine rack.
Ski wine racks and balsa wood mock-ups, so like boats, planes.
Nice. Yeah, you did go through it.
Yeah.
I think
it was the super glue fumes.
Adam. Whenever you're depressed, you can tell because he goes straight to model airplanes. You see a lot of Gorilla Glue around the house. You want to check in on that guy? So his roommate and his co-founder said at the time that what they're doing, they're not building a business. They're trying to bring about a shift in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So in 25 years, he said Etsy would be both worldwide and personal, global, local marketplace, a web version of the Athenian Agora. And I love the fact that these CEOs can only go as far as online town square. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because it's like the same idea that everybody, like CEOs have 5 ideas. Online town square, owning the media, having a lot of kids, being president. That's it.
That's all they have?
That's all they have. And you know, the smaller scale idea he has, I think is a good one. Like, it is cool to bring artists together. It is cool to train them. It's great to put that in 2007. That was a new idea. I think it's a legitimately good idea. But as soon as they scale up, it's like the same bullshit central marketplace that business boys have been hawking for decades. Here's a couple more quotes from the profile. In a way, I see Etsy as an art project. He suggested that Etsy could disturb the way people see the world, rethinking what makes their possessions important or trivial, leading us to reevaluate the way we consume. Quote, I speak to people in the business world and the technology world, but I don't admire them, he says, pointing to an 8-inch combat knife for emphasis. Like, what if it wasn't a knife, but it was just like he clocks his gun? What do you do?
Yeah, you
Clock.
Yeah. Wait, you
right
load your gun?
Yeah, load
load. Wait, you cock your gun.
Cock your gun.
Yeah.
But I don't admire them. I admire the makers of the world. This is not empty rhetoric. Kalin makes his own furniture and his own underwear. He also thinks that trying to maximize shareholder value is ridiculous, adding, I couldn't run a company where you had to use that as an excuse for why it was doing things. When I read this quote, I had the thought of a bunch of fucking dweebs in a conference room at JP Morgan doing due diligence for Etsy, reading this profile and just mocking the shit out of him and being like, what a fucking loser. But it's sad because those guys actually want to be him. Like, he's the type of man who makes his own underwear and makes his own furniture, and they could never be that man because their dads thought sewing and woodworking were for girls and poors. So now they're stuck fucking clickety-clack for a bone from Jamie Dimon. Just based on what I'm picking up from this guy's personality, I bet you he probably relived a lot of that bullying experience once he got into the finance world in New York City. What do you think about that? Like, to me, he seems like more of a man. What, do you agree? I mean, he can make his own fucking underwear.
Yeah, totally.
If I'm stuck in an apocalypse.
Look, I think Bobby, as I'll call him, Bobby is a man of where he lives in Brooklyn. Yeah. And like, he's the king of Brooklyn. Yeah. And I don't think Manhattan is the you
don't think Fi-Dye is the place for him?
Yeah, I just don't think so. I think he was misunderstood. Yeah. I think if there was a venture capital firm in Bed-Stuy or something, then I think they would totally get it, and Etsy would be great.
I think misunderstood is the perfect word. He was misunderstood by the finance guys, and he also completely misunderstood them. But I do think it's worth pausing on the vision that Kalin had, because it actually worked, and it stuck. Even while the guts of the company, and we'll talk about the shitification of Etsy, the guts of the company have been transformed, but the brand has stuck. You still thought in 2024 that you could get a handmade bed from Etsy, even though you can't. It's the brand that I think of when I think of Etsy, of handmade and unique and bespoke and human. And, they were clear from the beginning. Etsy was not eBay. Etsy was not Amazon. But unfortunately for Kalin, vision can only get you so far. And at this point, he's 27. He's misunderstood. He's the CEO of a company with 650,000 members and 50 employees. And I'd argue that when I was 27, I knew more about business than he did. But I can't imagine being a CEO of a company at this age. 27 is so young. And you think Hollywood obsessed with youth? Like, Silicon Valley's venture capitalists would say Sabrina Carpenter is overexperienced. And I wondered for a while why these VCs are so eager to invest in youth. Like, why do we always see Fortune 30 under 30? We've proven at this point that they cannot be trusted. But I think that the reason why these Silicon Valley guys are so eager to invest in these founders before their frontal lobe develops is so they can take advantage of them. Think about how stupid you are at 27, and some old guy comes up to you and is like, hey, I'm going to make you a millionaire. I'm going to give you $5 million. Can you imagine that? $5 million. To you as a 27-year-old seems like more money you can even imagine.
Totally. I think you bring up a great point. I think this is more like grooming, right? You're young, you're looking for validation, and everyone's telling you no. Meanwhile, logic says you have to get capital. You have to get capital. You have to scale.
Not logic, but also peer pressure.
Well, not logic, but people are telling you that. Everybody around you is telling you that. And you're looking real left, right, and center. You're being denied by VCs. Somehow, some way, you eventually get that validation. You're going to do whatever you can to remain in good standing with these guys. So it is very much to me like grooming.
Yes.
But even worse because I can't say even worse. As bad because now there's a monetary value associated with it, right? And I mean, once people get a taste of power and money, forget about it.
It's a type of leverage that is unimaginable because think about it. These venture capitalists, $5 million to them is nothing. They could give $5 million to every fucking Peter Thiel fellow reject, and it wouldn't even make a dent on their balance sheet. But to these kids, now you've got a bunch of kids who are hungry and, want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. You have them slurping up your every word.
Yeah, and you've got the VCs who are probably, this is how many unicorns we've invested in, blah, 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 blah. And you're looking up to them. You are doing exactly what they tell you to do, right?
And that's exactly what happened when Kalin met Fred Wilson of Union Square Capital. For a while, Kalin was refusing VC money. They all wanted 20% of his company. But Wilson said, look, for that same amount of money, I'll invest 5%. I'll invest for 5%. Give you $5 million for 5% of your company. And we're in this together, buddy. Here's a picture of the partners from Union Square Capital. It's giving Sanderson sisters in polos. They're just scary to me. And the middle guy is Fred Wilson. And he looks like the most unhinged, unwell of them all. Terrible haircut. And it's important to point out, to our point about, I don't know what we would call it, economic grooming.
Venture grooming.
Venture grooming. When these guys gave Etsy $5 million, the company had no business plan. So I want you to remember two things when we move on to the next piece of corporate gossip. Number one, no business plan. Number two, Fred Wilson. Okay? All right, you ready to move on to corporate gossip number two? Corporate gossip number two is that little doe from the first piece of corporate gossip. Surprise, bitches! That doe was Bambi, and the venture capitalists have his little dear friends in their crosshairs. So the things that you have to realize is that venture capitalists are not innovators, they're not disruptors, they're not creative thinkers. Venture capitalists are copycats. So once one of them invests, they all kind of circle around and they all want a piece. The next year after that Union Square Capital investment of $5 million, Etsy raises another $27 million pretty easily. And then their valuation is about $90 million in 2008. Remember, it goes up to $26 billion in 2021. So now there are adults in the room, right? Kalin's got some other people to answer to. He has real adult investors. And it's becoming very clear that at 28, our little baby deer is drowning. He steps down from CEO. He's then reinstated. There were reports that he was like all over the place. He was a bad manager. He's throwing out ideas left and right, and they're ideas that doesn't really make any sense. There was drama between him and the sellers. There was a blog called Etsy Bitch that gave Kalin the nickname Bozo Dick.
Oh.
She's really lucky that she didn't have a blog called eBay Bitch.
Yeah.
Where she would have been terrorized by executives. Listen to our eBay episode if you want to know what we were talking about. So he steps down finally for good in 2011. So what's that, like 7 years after he founds the company? And a guy called Chad Dickerson, who had been the chief technology officer, takes over as CEO and chairman. Now, I need you to know that Dickerson is absolutely beloved by his employees. He seems like the perfect person to take over from Kalin. He's got the maturity of a real live adult. He's got empathetic leadership style that people really are drawn to. And remember, at this point, like a lot of talented people had turned down higher paying jobs so they could work at Etsy because they believed in the mission, because it was a fun place to work. You know, they believed in arts and crafts. I think if you were like an English major who got an MBA, this would be a perfect place for you. Dickerson starts his career working as a journalist, actually, at a newspaper in North Carolina. He had gotten an English degree from Duke. And then eventually he becomes an executive at Yahoo, and then he joins Etsy. Those early years, he remembers it being a total mess. He's like, I remember starting in September 2008, and my first week on the job, the site goes down. And no one could tell what was going on, and it was just kind of a taste of what to come. I mean, remember, these are like arts and crafts kids. Like, they don't know how to run websites. They don't know what a business plan is. They don't even have a business plan. So Dickerson can really be credited for forcing the company to grow up. Look at Chad. Don't you think he's a little corporate cutie?
Oh, yeah.
You think he's cuter than John Flannery?
No, not cuter than John Flannery.
I know. They're both so cute. Look at them. There's something, if you have, I want to do a data analysis, and I feel that if you have a round, like cherub-like face, I highly doubt that you're a bad CEO. Because I feel like a lot of the CEOs that we talk about, and we're going to meet one shortly, who have like very angular faces, end up being real shitheads.
Okay. I'll get that started.
Thanks. Can you run the numbers?
Yeah, run the numbers on that.
So Chad is the one who gets Etsy to the place where venture capitalists want to go, right? It's their version of the Rainbow Bridge. It's the place where all the little investors hop around with their little tails wagging, waiting not for their long dead owner, but for an initial public offering. Etsy goes public April 2015. Their prospectus, which is like the thing that they submit to shareholders to say, like, here's why you want to invest in our company in the IPO, it's got phrases in it like, we keep it real, always. You know that TikTok trend that's going around, like millennial burger shop? About,
I'm not on TikTok.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, like that's a very millennial phrase. We keep it real. Like, bring your whole self to work.
Yeah.
Hustle harder.
You're right.
Etsy's also a certified B Corp when it goes public.
Let your freak flag fly.
Let your freak flag, totally. And you know what? I stand by that. I definitely said that. So Etsy is a certified B Corp when it goes public, and it's only the second B Corp to do so. And do you know what a B Corp is? So
go through what a B Corp is, and then I'll have a comment.
Okay. So B Corp is a business certification that basically denotes high ethical and environmental standards. The prospectus states that Etsy wants to, quote, change the decades-old conventional retail model of valuing profits over community, and its reputation depends on maintaining its B Corp status by continuing to offer employees stock options and paid time for volunteering, paying all part-time and temporary workers 40% above local living wages, teaching local women and minorities programming skills, and composting its food waste.
See, I read this as like a checklist for B Corps, and I was like, okay, check. We've got temporary workers, 40% above. Okay, teaching local women. Yep. Upskilling. Yep. Oh, shit. We don't compost our food. Oh, no. All right. Let's go into oil refining, you guys.
Forget it. It's either B Corp or nothing.
Yeah, it'd be too hard to bring in the compost bins and separate everything out. Let's just skip out on it.
I like the idea of weapons manufacturing.
Yeah.
Wait, I also love the idea of like a weapons manufacturer, oil refiner, like being a B Corp.
We're upskilling our child labor. We're upskilling them. Like we're teaching them more useful how to jam their hands in different ways into machinery.
Did you know that 70% of kids that graduate high school don't know the proper amount of ethanol that's supposed to be in gas? That's a real failure.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, listen, the thing about the B Corp is if I were those turds sitting in the JP Morgan office, what I would say is, what's the ROI on composting, you fucking nerd? Like, genuinely, I mean, yes, you can be a B Corp, and yes, this sounds great, but in the system that we have created, there is no shareholder bonus for being a B Corp. And at the end of the day, these institutional or sophisticated shareholders who actually have pull at this company don't give a fuck. Sorry, it's just words.
It's better left unsaid.
Better left unsaid. I mean, or better, don't go on. I genuinely feel that if you are a company that feels that you're doing good work and that you are contributing to society, you should absolutely not IPO. And the only reason you would have been IPOing is because you want to make a couple of people really rich.
JP Morgan's a B Corp, you know. Yeah, they put dog shit in paper bags and light it on fire at the doorstep of...
I'm sure they had a loophole that said we don't need to compost. Jamie Dimon poops in a bag every day. So here's another telling quote from the New York Times. Quote, Etsy's IPO is an experiment in corporate governance, a test of whether Wall Street will embrace a company that puts doing social and environmental good on the same pedestal with, if not ahead of, maximizing profits. When I read that, I think about Charles Koch reading that, putting down his newspaper, breaking his martini glass with one hand, and then eating the glass shards. And then he picks up the phone and calls the underground nuclear bunker that maintains Jack Welch's body at 98.6 degrees inside a capitalism-themed magic 8-ball. And then when the scientists look into the little foggy window, they read, "And Dickerson."
It's great, Rebecca. That's really poetic.
It's a nice fantasy. So you ready for corporate gossip number 3?
Number 3.
Okay, close your eyes, little children. Trigger warning. This is the part where the hunters kill both of the baby deers, and then they mount them on a wooden plaque in their investment property. their Airbnb. So when you're a cute little quirky company that IPOs, you take off the bring your freak flag sign to work. You know, it's like literally painting over the walls.
Right.
Once these companies go public, the CEOs are basically walking the plank. I mean, the board of directors will make big promises in the prospectus because they want that share price as high as possible because they have those insider shares. And as soon as it goes public,
you can bring your dog to work, but bring your own bags. We're not supplying shit bags no more.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if the company doesn't deliver instantly, someone will pay the price. And that person was the little corporate cutie, Chad Dickerson. 2 years after Etsy goes public, in 2017, stock price is sagging. You know, angel investors and executives got a big windfall, but the company is still struggling to make big money. And a big announcement comes from the New York Times, quote, at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, May 2nd, Mr. Dickinson called an emergency meeting in the Etsy-torium. Usually a loose public speaker, this makes me sad. Mr. Dickinson read from a script, his voice shaking as he made an announcement. He was laying off 80 employees, the largest cuts in Etsy history. And he said he had been fired by the board. Mr. Dickinson broke into tears and sat down to steady himself. Many in the audience openly wept.
What a little bitch.
I feel so sad. Like, I mean, I have had leaders in the past who I really loved, who were good to me, and they've been fired. And I know that feeling where you're just like, you don't deserve this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for people to genuinely cry.
Yeah.
People wouldn't cry if Jeff Bezos was fired.
Well, I'm sure that's exactly what you experienced when you were laid off.
Yes. Everybody got around. I have the whole company. Share price actually went down on the day that I was laid off. Do you think that's a coincidence?
But they were crying. I mean, crying.
Sobbing. Everybody. They had to take a day mourning.
The woman's laptop broke on her Zoom, right? She had so many tears coming down her face.
It was so sad. I'm kidding. Usually everybody went business as normal. Okay. So the next day, Fred Wilson, he's one of those White Lotus yacht party looking guys from Union Square Capitol, addresses the company with his little baby bangs. And he says, if you're going to blame anyone for this decision of firing Dickinson, I want you to blame me. And then he introduces a new CEO. We'll talk about him in just 1 second. But he also announces that he would take over the position of chairman of the board. I just want to touch down on Fred Wilson quickly because he's doing one thing that we love to see from these messy boss boys. He is spilling the tea. He loved Kalin's vision when he sold 5% of his company to him for $5 million. But now, in retrospect, now that he's in power, he's got some shit to talk about how things were really going down. Here's Fred Wilson. It was chaos. There was no management. It was all creative energy of the founders and just a bunch of people hanging around. Excuse me. What the fuck did you think would happen when you gave $5 million to a bunch of 27-year-olds in Brooklyn with no business plan who wanted to run an art site?
Well, I think they did with the money. You ready? Mm-hmm. All right. So I think these guys bought a bunch of old used Carhartt jackets and then they were like the work coats, and then they stitched them all together to make the world's largest Carhartt jacket to be displayed next to the Prospect Park Zoo.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. Or maybe they invested the money to develop like a beanie that sits like perfectly on the top of your head, not like too low, not too high, way above your ears, almost like a yarmulke, but it doesn't need to be clipped in. It just stays on your head, you know, because in Brooklyn, that's what they wear.
I know. I think that they bought a bunch of penny farthings.
Oh!
Like those old-timey bicycles.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they just made like a long chain of penny farthings.
Everybody on the executive team, so it was like a 20-person penny farthing.
Yeah. No, it was everybody on the team. They're like, oh no, we hired another guy. I guess we have to add another bike. They were like, we're going to have to hire a welder, you guys.
Yeah. So that's what fucking Robert Kalin did with your money, Fred Wilson. Like, obviously. But that just goes to show you, right? Like, for him to say there was chaos, there was no management. What did you think when you invest? Why did you invest? Why didn't you help them? And then you say people hanging around. Okay. It's okay when you hang around. on a golf course or at St. Bart's and talk about fucking arbitrage. Grow up. You Wharton ass, zero creativity, simple brain, bad haircut loser. Look at this guy's bad haircut.
I bet he hasn't spent a day south of Brooklyn Heights ever.
I want to give this man a piece of paper and a fucking crayon. Make art. You don't even appreciate art. I guarantee you don't ever just sit and think about life with no distraction. I guarantee it. When's the last time you've done mushrooms?
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't give me the excuse that I use, that I'm on Lexapro. It doesn't work for me. So Fred Wilson, with his boundless creativity, he says, enough. Enough. I don't like this. I don't like it when people are mad at me because I fired that loser. He didn't do anything for shareholder value. What about what I'm doing for shareholder value? That's what you guys should care about. I'm sick of the adorable, quirky, beloved CEOs with English degrees. I want a CEO who can't read. And I'm sick of guys with better hair than me. I need a tall baldy. And he better have an MBA from Stanford or else. Now get this guy on a fucking table.
Get this guy standing on a table with cuffed jeans.
Please, if you're not watching on YouTube, you need to see these images, promotional images of the new CEO standing on the shiniest conference table in the world with light bulbs hanging above his head. I got big ideas. Look at this man, Josh Silverman, everybody.
His nipples are piercing through
Oh my
that
God,
shirt.
his nipples are piercing through his shirt. He has major headlights, THO, titty hard-ons. Brittany.
Why didn't they edit those out in post?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a little retouching effort there.
Here he is, new CEO of Etsy, Josh Silverman. He's got a Stanford MBA. He works for a company that was acquired by, here he is again, folks, Barry Diller. Big character this season. Then he was working at American Express and then eBay. And then he was the CEO of Skype. And now he's here to streamline operations.
Did you know that Skype recently died completely?
No.
No longer exists.
Well,
I used to use Skype for business all the time.
I still remember that sound. Like,
Boop.
yeah. Anyway, he's standing on a table in this promotional image. That means he means business. So this is, I think, the updated version. Do you remember when we were talking about Les Moonves and his classic pose of arms locked, fists on table? I mean business. Mm-hmm. This is fuck fists on table, feet on table. I'm going to stand up here. Somebody help me up.
Yeah, take that, Leslie.
So here's another quote from a New York Times article. And I'm referencing New York Times a lot. I did pull quotes from other outlets, but New York Times must have had an incredible source because they have just the best quotes. So Silverman had joined the Etsy board 6 months before he was appointed CEO. And then there's this anecdote about him listening to Dickerson give a presentation on a company sales call. And Silverman thinks, I know what's going on here. You're not growing fast enough. To his credit, Dickerson had already been pounded by the board and was pushing Etsy already to drive sales. And he had even encouraged employees to read a book called A Sense of Urgency.
I've put on your desks a copy of John Cotter's A Sense of Urgency. What I'd love you to do is go home, read it. Don't read the whole thing. It's fine. Come back. Think about how you can implement those ideas in your day-to-day.
Direct quote. For fuck's sake, executives love a sense of urgency. I've said it once and I'll say it again, and I stand by this. Speed is not a strategy. More is not a strategy. We don't pay you the big bucks to come around here and be like, have you thought about doing it faster? Grow up. Grow up. This is masters of scale. It's the same shit. You could poke a fucking hole in it with barely even any pressure. I need you to have a sense of urgency. For what? Here's a quote. Fred Wilson says, the house was burning and nobody was paying attention. Chad Dickerson got the company about as far as he was going to get it. We needed somebody to take it to the next level. Ouch. Fred Wilson is participating in investors' favorite pastime, throwing employees under the bus.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from Chad Dickerson, which I found on the website E-commerce Bites.
Good plug.
Isn't that great? You'll remember that from our eBay episode. Thank you to the Steiners. So here he is, Chad Dickerson. He said, quote, "The fact that when I got fired, I publicly said I had gotten fired versus some, quote, decided to pursue other opportunities, corporate bullshit, is largely due to the sense of truth I gained from working with a coach. Life is full of pain. Lean into it. If you got fired, speak the truth. It always catches up to you anyway." Good for you, Chad. Good for you.
That's so funny because I was going to recommend to you, you say, "I've taken the opportunity."
I'm excited to spend more time.
I'm excited. You know what?
I will be a stay-at-home dog mom.
You know what? I'm dedicating myself to the thing I've always wanted to do, write a thesis on Vanderpump Rules.
Yes. Really diving into my passion.
Yes.
No, well, it's just like, I pay $20 a day for a dog walker, and it just didn't make sense for me to go into the office when I could just...
Opportunity cost?
Opportunity cost.
Yeah, and I mean, Sandy growing up without a mother at 13, that's going to be difficult. There's a lot of trauma for that dog that's been left on the LIE prior to you getting her.
Literally is begging to go back onto the streets. If you were wondering what's going on with Chad Dickerson these days, I'll give him a little plug. If you're listening, Chad Dickerson, we'd love to have you on. And we would love to have you with our dinner party. Open invitation to you and John Flannery whenever you want. You can hang out. What do we say? You can come to my apartment. You can sit at the table. I'll sit on the couch. We don't have enough chairs. So he's doing executive coaching. He's on the board of the Brooklyn Public Library. He's learned piano and is in a David Berman tribute band called Humbled by the Void. And I'll put their SoundCloud in the show notes.
Great. That's great.
I'm happy for him. I think he looks really happy. And it's a good thing he left Etsy because Josh Silverman is about to drive it into the ground. So corporate gossip number 4 is Josh Silverman pushes his big old shiny embryo brain to the absolute limit. But will it be enough? So Josh Silverman takes off his loafers, steps down off the conference table with the help of an intern, and settles into his big oak desk. Not particle board, solid oak at Etsy HQ. He gets out a piece of paper and scribbles some old trusty plays from the old Stanford Business School playbook. What do we got here? Okay, first up, layoffs. 11% of the firm gone. Okay, let's just brainstorming here. Streamline operations, move some data to the cloud, improve the user experience, cut the support staff, increase fees. Hang on, I know I got some in there. Let's just go over that for now, okay? Let's see how that works. This is like real low-hanging nutsack type stuff. And at least on paper, early results were promising. Profits were up, obviously, because you increased fees and decreased employee overhead. But when you asked sellers, they weren't so stoked because they were being completely squeezed by Etsy's with these new policies. So they're increasing their processing fees that they have to make. Etsy is now encouraging them to offer free shipping so they could compete with Amazon. But it's like, why the fuck does grandma in St. Louis need to be paying for shipping to send me wind chimes?
Grandma's not selling wind chimes on Amazon. She doesn't want to offer free shipping.
Yeah. It's like it's insane. Etsy also forces them to use their own in-house payment processor, which obviously they got to cut out.
Oh, dude, we're going to take 4%.
Dude, 4%. It's like not that
4%
bad.
off the top? Duh.
And a seller basically says they're doing their best to mimic eBay and Amazon. Sales have slumped. I haven't been able to connect with the Etsy marketing department. They used to help me really promote. Like, Etsy used to be very connected to the sellers. They'd invite them to the warehouse. They'd feature them. They were very connected with them. I mean, they needed them to do their business. But the seller says they're pressuring me to offer cheaper shipping rates, which cuts into my profits. I've seen Etsy through all the changes, and for the first time, I'm worried. You think Silverman called her up and was like, "Listen, bitch, I don't tell you how to block your wool sweater, so you don't tell me how to maximize shareholder value."
I think that's exactly what he did.
So just a fun fact here. So, who are these sellers? 77% of Etsy sellers are a business of one. It's just one grandma. 28% live in rural areas. They can't go to weekly farmers markets. they're isolated. Etsy is, for a lot of these people, the only way they can get their work out into the world. And not to state the obvious here, but Silverman was basically ripping out the things that people really liked about Etsy, like the things that cost money. It's funny, like when I go to dinner parties and some patchy ass bearded guy in glasses is like, America is the most prosperous country on earth, and that's because of wealthy businessmen. But we see time and again that it's regular people who come together and build something great over time, and then those wealthy businessmen plunder it for their own gain. And then somehow brainwash these bearded guys in glasses to thinking that it's the wealthy businessmen who saved the ship that they have stripped for parts. Because here's Silverman, so starved for oxygen because he's drowning in money that he has, at this point, full-on brain damage, and says this. Quote, Silverman doesn't like the words handmade or craft because they, quote, don't communicate anything to buyers about when to think of Etsy. He says now, nobody wakes up thinking, gosh, I need to buy something handmade today. Handmade is not the value proposition. Unique, personalized, express your sense of identity. Those are the things that speaks to buyers. Handmade is not the value proposition of Etsy.
It blows my mind when CEOs say stuff like this. Like, they are just saying it with no information behind it. Like, show me the market research that says that. You just want to have a contrary opinion that's like, whoa, this guy is really thinking outside the box. People want unique things that are not readily available. Like, have you ever heard of art collecting, you idiot? I will say, it's so funny because when I was going through the research, I go to this store. My dog loves this store in our neighborhood, and it's a larger retail store. And I was talking to the store manager who we're friends with because our dog literally loves this guy. And he was saying that his CEO came to visit today, and she was basically like, I'm lost in the store. I don't know what's going on. You know what we need? QR codes on all the products. And it's just like, why? What? That's your move, and like, why? And like, what's driving that? Like, you just want to fuck shit up. Like, you just want to put your stamp on it.
No, she went to a cocktail party. Somebody gave her that idea, and she was like, I'm running with it. Like, there's no actual thought behind it. Like, he had an idea that he wanted to move away from handmade and more towards dropship garbage. And that's why then he's backing into it. So this woman had an idea that she wanted to use QR codes. And then to back into it, she has to go to the store and say, I'm confused.
Yeah. Also, like, being contrarian.
Yeah, because that's how they think they're smart.
Well, I think differently than all of you guys.
Because otherwise, what's the value of them as a CEO? If they just say the same thing that their other executives say, then, I mean, just like the rest of us, right? Like, you need to kind of stand out from the crowd. So I completely agree with you. It's being contrarian for contrarian's sake.
Yeah.
When I think about, like, him being, like, handmade isn't the value proposition, I think about, like, a single brain cell fucking loser being like, how do I express my identity? I got a fucking koozie with a Giants logo on the one side, and then the other side's the lion. It's made with AI, so the lion's got like half a mane. But still. So Silverman takes over, and internally, by the way, just shit is absolutely falling apart. Glassdoor reviews tanked. The New York Times actually inquired with Etsy, hey, like, your Glassdoor rankings are tanking. And then in a matter of days, several new glowing reviews appeared with titles, Why I Love Etsy.
It's so funny because now that I think about it, when I was probably looking at Etsy at the time, one of the probably several times I applied there, it was like top company to work for, right? This is so desperate.
Yeah.
This is a new one for us. This is also a new one. Like, I'm imagining Josh Silverman like going down, and you know, it's not coming from Josh Silverman directly to employees, but the HR is like, guys, everyone make sure you make great Glassdoor reviews, and don't forget to mention Josh Silverman. Best one gets a $25 gift card to Etsy.
I bet you they were like, we have been the subject of unfair press in recent days, and in order to do the best thing for our business, we need you to fake data. So At this point, there's a lot of people who are wondering, was it a huge mistake for us to IPO? Like maybe we were never meant to IPO. This was supposed to always be kind of like a small artisanal marketplace. And IPO has basically put a lot of unnecessary pressure on our executives who have ruined the company. Like me, I think that. I think that it was a mistake. I mean, what do you think at this point? Do you think it was a mistake for them to IPO?
I'd say it was a little bit of a misstep.
So if we told that to Fred Wilson from Union Square Ventures, this is what he would say. Can you do your voice?
To all the people who say taking Etsy public was a mistake, I say that's ridiculous. There are some people who will say, well, it's not right for me. I like the old culture. Well, I'm sorry about that. Going public was the best thing that ever happened to this company.
Here's what I have to say to that. Hey, I got really rich and I still need to sleep at night. So fuck you. Final piece of corporate gossip is, Papa Wilson, do you still love me? Circled yes or no. Signed, Josh Silverman. Okay, so let's kind of like get us quickly up to present. So we'll move up to early 2020, 2.5 years after Silverman took over as CEO, and he went to CEO church. It's Cipriani's. He gets down on his knees, and he prays to Our Lady of Bloomberg. He says, "Send me a blessing, please." And oh boy, did she deliver! That was January 2020. By mid-year 2020, Silverman's sitting on a pretty work-from-home stock. These are stocks like Zoom, Peloton, DocuSign. They were just going absolutely full throttle, balls to the wall during the pandemic. Etsy's up 250% in 2020. Yay, Josh, you did it! And this was all due to your smart business moves. Things are only going up from here. We will never have problems again.
Not.
Oh, shit. My calculations are incorrect. Due to market forces, by mid-2022, basically Silverman's right back where he started. And you think Silverman and John Foley from Peloton, who kind of experienced the same journey, just pound brewskis and commiserate over how unlucky they are?
Maybe I need to stand on top of another table, and then in another 2 years, we'll be okay.
No, we need a higher table. More lights. Also,
more nipple, please.
Please.
Maybe shirtless?
In 2022, to make things even worse, 30,000 Etsy sellers created the Indie Sellers Guild, and they go on strike over proposed policy changes, prevalence of low-quality drop shippers, which absolutely blew up on the site during the pandemic, and increased processing fees. And in 2023, Silverman says that while Etsy's marketplace is still more than double the size that it was in 2019, its gross merchandise sales have effectively remained flat since 2021. You worked in retail. What does that mean?
Well, that's not good.
It basically means that if he owned a shopping mall, the size of his shopping mall and number of stores have doubled in 3 years. There are twice as many products on the floor, but sales are the same, which basically means that sales have halved, or like,
No, there's flat.
they're flat, but you put in a lot more work.
I forgot what the word is for it. Your productivity.
Yeah, your productivity is like through the shitter.
Your productivity is half.
You're making fewer dollars per listing than you were before.
Yeah, and your website experience is probably shit.
Yeah.
Because you're just pages and pages and pages of
Garbage.
Yeah.
Your site sucks.
Yeah.
And here's why. The Atlantic published an article in 2023 called AI-Generated Junk is Flooding Etsy, which calls out a growing cottage industry of people using AI tools like Midjourney to create images that you can either sell via digital downloads or hook up to your Etsy shop to a print-on-demand service like Printify to sell a shitty mug with their shitty AI image for like $7. So then in 2023, sales are flat. AI-generated shit is all over Etsy. Etsy cuts 11% of their workforce right before Christmas, which Silverman called unfortunate from his mansion.
I'll be in St. Bart's.
Now, in 2024 and 2025, Etsy has way more competition, not just Amazon, not just Etsy, but Temu and Wayfair and other companies who make fucking dropship garbage and sell the same knockoffs that Etsy does. So, you want to talk about the future of this company?
What future?
After all that, after all the bullshit that Fred Wilson and Josh Silverman have put this company through, I found this article from this past July from CNBC. And here's the headline. Etsy CEO says company is escaping the race to the bottom and getting back to its artisan roots. They address the fact that in recent years, quote, Etsy has found itself overrun with mass-produced generic items from resellers who have learned how to game the website and crowd out handcrafted product. Silverman announced that the company would be rolling out policy changes to make it clear what's AI and what's not. He says that each product has to fall into one of 4 categories: made by a seller, either by hand or using automated tools, designed by a seller, handpicked by a seller, or sourced by a seller. Here's a Silverman quote. I feel like the race to the bottom in terms of commoditized commerce right now, and almost everyone in e-commerce is playing that race. They're selling the exact same product that they're trying to sell it to you for 2 cents cheaper, ship it 2 hours faster.
Allow me, I have a degree in bullshitties. Okay. I think what he's trying to say is Etsy either accidentally or purposely tried to outgame Temu and Amazon at games they invented, resulting in piss poor results. So now Silverman is like, hold on, let me try and play hero. I'm going to make Etsy handmade again. Make Etsy great again, baby.
He calls up Robert Kalin on his, obviously, his corded phone.
Yeah.
His house phone, and goes, hey, man, do you have any ideas about how to make Etsy, like, a little bit more, like, artisanal, like, more handicrafts?
Interestingly, isn't this a contradictory nugget to his quote from a few years back that consumers don't want homemade goods? What was it? There's no value proposition?
Forgot what I said 2 years ago. It's not that I was wrong necessarily. It's that the data at the time actually painted a different picture.
He's like dialing up his Stanford MBA and he's like, hey, where in the book does it say how to take back a quote in New York Times?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Can you look up what his salary is, by the way?
Josh Silverman made $16.5 million.
$16.5 million. For an e-commerce company.
Oh.
What?
1.1. I think automotive had a tough year in 2024.
Okay. Do like another one. What about H&M?
What about Kellogg's?
Yeah, Kellogg's, CEO Kellogg.
$9 million.
So he's making double what the CEO of Kellogg's is making. And he runs a site. Oh, sorry. A shitty site. One shitty site. Etsy's still struggling. In the most recent quarter, merchandise sales are down 4%. Stock is down 32% year over year. And guess what? Elliott Management has been scooping up shares. They have a 13% stake in the company. And an Elliott partner just joined the board. Very scary, Joshy. Watch out.
Well, Josh's days are numbered. Yeah. Hopefully he's been saving.
Yeah. Hopefully you've been living below your means, Josh. But if you have any questions about being laid off, just give me a call.
Oh, you didn't get golden parachute? Oh, that wasn't in your...
You got a couple months healthcare.
That wasn't in your...
No, I didn't get a golden
exit package.
Shit, I forgot.
Oh.
Damn it. All right, so what happens to Rob Kalin? So this is interesting. Now, Robert Kalin is making furniture in the Catskills, and he kind of finally made the small artist colony that he had always dreamed of called Catskill Mill. By the way, can I say, massive glow up.
I was going to say, he's aging backwards.
Holy shit, dude. He looks good. He looks buff.
By the way, the art direction is great. The macrame.
Yes. Just like kind of very demure. He's crossing
look at the forearms on this guy.
That's what I'm saying. Huge forearms. He's got tons of his like macrame or his wool rather hanging in the yarns hanging in the background. Clear that he's about to knit something. He just looks like demure, I think is the right word. And frankly, hot as hell. Excuse me. Him, Chad Dickerson. You want to talk about masculine? Being vulnerable? Being honest? That's sexy.
All right, get a room.
Sorry.
Let's move on.
All right, so he's done what he's always dreamed of. He has this artist colony, Catskill Mill. He's got 2 twin girls. He's divorced, ladies. His ex-wife runs an avant-garde fashion boutique in Hudson. He's got a dairy farm. He started a preschool. And like, he's basically doing the same things. He's opening businesses. Like, he opened a Vietnamese food truck and they lose money, but he's rich. He has fun. Like, I love that. He's not like hurting anyone with his wealth. That's great. But what I found really compelling is he has this.
Well, he is breaking hearts in Hudson.
Hudson, he probably cleans up.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe he wasn't drowning in pussy back in 2007, but I'm sure he does not have a problem now. What I found really compelling is that there's a Vox article published in 2019 where he reflects on his experience at Etsy. And it's kind of perfect because it's the last article that I found right when I was finishing this outline. So we can kind of confirm some of our initial guesses on what was going on back in 2008 between Kalin and Union Square Ventures. And just bear with me because I'm going to read part of this article, but it's worthwhile. So it says, quote, "He didn't know what seed funding was when he took it. He didn't really get what a startup was or understood the obligations of institutional money. Accepting the Union Square Ventures investment was probably the moment when things got away from him. Quote, I didn't have enough awareness of the context of what was going on there in terms of if we take this step, how will it compromise our values?" So that's basically what we thought. Like, we were under the assumption that they didn't understand him and he didn't understand them. And also, again, he's 27.
So he's alluding to VC grooming.
Yes.
For lack of a better word, right? He didn't know the implications of taking the investment, and he was likely being told at the time, this is the only path forward.
And also, we'll let you do your thing. We understand your vision. We, like, won't interfere.
Yeah. Trust us.
Trust us. Come on.
It won't hurt.
When he's talking about the business now, he says, I have a lot of compassion for people who are trying to run their business on Etsy. He says he doesn't pay attention to Etsy anymore because it doesn't do anything that he thinks is interesting. All the news about its quarterly earnings and share prices, and he finds it boring to reduce the company to a small handful of some numbers. He thought the new CEO's name was Jason until I emailed him. And you know what? I think he did know. If he did know and he lied and he said he didn't know, I think that's fucking a boss move. So then here's kind of his takeaway. Though he once dreamed of Etsy sellers making their living selling the things that they made themselves, he now knows that was never really what happened for the vast majority. Even when he was CEO and things were small and maybe idyllic, only a fraction of a percentage of sellers were making more than $30,000 a year. How much money does Etsy have in its bank account? And how much does the average Etsy seller have in their bank account? Who can afford to be more generous? He asked, I assume rhetorically because he doesn't pause for breath. Yet here we are. The company is asking for sellers to be more generous with the company.
Wow, that's a great line.
Not?
Yeah, that is a really good line.
You ready for the takeaways?
Yeah.
I really thought about this episode a lot this summer because I went to a crafts fair in upstate New York, and I was just kind of flabbergasted about how much AI garbage is out for sale on a physical table. Like, it's actually kind of insane how many people are just doing that as a side hustle. And yeah, I guess support artists. I mean,
yeah, I think generally people have a good sense of what looks good and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think like that AI business is not.
There's no way they're making a profit.
No, I don't think they're making. I think it's lazy.
Yeah.
And I think it's a get rich, like it's
like maybe somebody got them into like some type of
get
MLM,
rich quick. Yeah. And just like look at how easy this is.
Yeah. So I think some people argue that like Josh Silverman saved Etsy and that Etsy wouldn't have continued to exist if he hadn't come in. But like my argument would be it just never should have been what it became. Like, it shouldn't have been big. Maybe it shouldn't have even been profitable. Maybe it should have had only 30 employees, and maybe it should have gone down from time to time. But like, it did serve a purpose at one point. And even though not many people were making over $30,000 a year, maybe it was just like, instead of getting a second job where you had to be like working at a call center, you could make the same amount of money selling your shit on eBay or Etsy, and it actually makes you happy. Like, I think this is the thing that we lose with shareholder value maximization is some companies can fill a niche, and that's enough. And they don't have to be perfect, and they don't have to be maximized at every turn, and they don't have to be productive. Like, maybe they can lose money once in a while, and that's okay because it serves a purpose. It serves the customers, it serves the employees, it serves the sellers. And it's like people like Josh Silverman who have ice cream scoops taken out of their brain and Stanford MBAs, all they see is money, and all they're rewarded for is money. And yeah, I mean, they just have to fail.
Yeah, I will add to that. And I just had a thought come in, like, Etsy could survive almost like a Craigslist, where it's just like nuts and bolts almost, but you don't see like Craigslist.
The UX is terrible.
It's incredibly popular, but it doesn't seem like there's a ton of money behind it. The one other thing I'd like to explore is like, what are the alternatives to fundraising with venture capital? A theme in a lot of the episodes, right? Is like a company has a great mission, VC comes in, scales it quickly, and it blows up. Like, are companies still crowdfunding? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly private investors.
What I'm saying is there needs to be an alternative to accumulate capital without selling your soul to the devil, right? Like, I'm sure there are venture capitals out there that operate differently, but I think they're few and far between. And, eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. Yeah. So the larger issue is what we've talked about before is like blitzscaling and the positive outlook on that. Like, we need a thought leader who's going to come out and say, like, state what needs to be said, which is, hey, maybe really fast, irresponsible growth is not the right idea just to gain market share. Like, let's make decisions responsibly and ethically, and maybe we'll grow the business at like a nice clip for a while.
5%.
Yeah. And what I'm actually hoping is that I think things like Doge will shine a light on the dangers of failing fast. Yeah. Like, Doge is kind of showing the real implications to that strategy, right? Of making huge wreckage. Yeah. There are people who aren't getting insulin today because Doge
are dying.
Who are dying. Exactly, right? Think about all the wreckage left behind. So I think that's kind of where I end this episode. All right. On to some good news.
So let's move to some good news. So this is actually, I gave our good news correspondent the week off, and we have a crowdsourced good news segment because I got some feedback. I got some feedback from my best friend who said, hey, totally understand your messaging about Amazon, but it feels like you're coming from your high horse when I say, hey, you can't, it's really difficult when you're we talk about being a progressive, you talk about workers' rights and you talk about unions and all these progressive policies, but also you shop on Amazon.
Yeah.
And it like, what there's a conflict there. And, she said to me, she's like, I understand there's a conflict there, but I'm struggling with easy ways to kind of start the process of weaning Amazon out of my life. And so she kind of gave me the feedback, like, maybe you could provide some easy ways to do that.
She said, you on a high horse.
Yeah, me on a high horse.
That's crazy. I've never had that issue with you. I've never had that issue with you preaching.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I know. But it was my best friend.
Let me hear these recommendations.
So anyway, I posted the question to you on Instagram, you guys, everybody listening. Because for me, I just cut it out, right? But for not everybody, that is an accessible option. And I understand that. Like, not everybody lives in a neighborhood where you can, for the most part, walk around and get what you need. So I posted it to you all on Instagram who live in various different places around the country. And for this good news section, hopefully, I'm going to give you some inspiration so you too can cut Jeff Bezos out of your life for good. So, you ready for the inspo? For the list? Yeah. So if you buy books on Amazon, Ashley Kong say that they left Goodreads for Storygraph, that they use their local library more than ever, and buy books at I'm Just Gen B said that they convinced their mom to give up Amazon Prime last week, and they switched from Audible to Libro FM for audiobooks. Do.Jordan says that they have used the library now more than ever in the past year. Hell yeah.
I still use Goodreads. I should take that off.
Me too.
But it's got all my stuff. I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. Damn, they have me.
I know. I actually thought about this. I was like, I'm lying because I totally forgot that Goodreads is owned by Amazon. But I'm sure there's a way, and I'll make a commitment to you guys. By next episode, I will have exported my data from Goodreads. You too?
I will try. Once you show me how to do it.
Okay. So, Kavo the First said that they logged out and stopped engaging with influencers who have Amazon storefronts. For general shopping, 10-star 130 says that they've canceled their subscriptions and are now doing all they can to go to the store instead of ordering online. DebK919 does most of their shopping on Craigslist. They say every day is Prime Day there.
I love that.
Yeah. Craigslist actually also has never IPO'd, despite many people wanting it to, and so I support that. The Buck is back, and TXA 1265 canceled their Amazon and Alexa Music accounts. IMWPJ said that they pretend not to know what Amazon is when someone mentions it.
That's a great tactic. Oh, wow.
That is so funny.
That sounds like an SNL bit.
I know. I love that. And that's something we can all do.
Yeah.
K Mueller 20 buys direct from the company or manufacturer. Christina Chase 207 drove 15 minutes just to get a new can opener from a local kitchen store. Liz Bitsy says that there's almost always a local business that carries what they need if they just think about it for 1 minute. Umayed 30 also says that they drive to the store to pick up common stuff and stick to Amazon only for things they can't find in the wild.
I'd like to say the person who orders directly from the company, that's a really great tool, especially if you love the brand, because Amazon is worked with Amazon
in a retail capacity.
And they are notoriously tough with margins back to the vendor.
So the vendor will get better margin.
The vendor gets better
like that company.
direct. Yeah. While it might take a little bit longer, I promise that your customer experience will be better if you have to make a return or an exchange. And the company makes a little bit more on it. Yeah. So it is a good thing to do.
And Sonia Margarita 90 said that they just deleted the app off their phone, says that they were surprised how they didn't miss it, and they bought less junk.
Sonia Morgan listens to this podcast. Interesting.
A few more comments. I won't include their names for obvious reasons. One listener says that when they go to Whole Foods, they ring up 8 bagels as 1 bagels, and which we don't condone stealing. But I will say Whole Foods has also been sued multiple times for wage theft, so... And another listener said, and I quote, "Bald man can suck my dick."
Ooh.
So I know it feels like, oh, what does it matter if I still buy it on Amazon? It's just $20. But I promise it matters. Every time you choose to walk or drive to your local pet store and buy a bag of dog food instead of buying it from Amazon, it matters. It matters to the pet store. And beyond the fact that Bezos can suck our collective dicks, I want to share one thing that I love about going to regular in-person brick and mortar stores, local stores, which is just like knowing the people in my neighborhood. I, like I said, was laid off yesterday, and I went to our local pet store. It's like a single one-off family-owned pet store owned by a husband and wife. And I was laid off at like 10 a.m. and then at 11 I had to go buy Sandy some food because she had run out. And this was like the first time I had been out. And I walked to the store and I get there, and the woman who runs the store, whose name is also my dog's name, she's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I was like, "I was laid off." And then she's like, "Oh," and so we just kind of sat there. She has got 2 cats. I just like sat there and pet the cats, and we were just chatting. And like, that's what Jeff Bezos could never do. That's what Bezos is trying to take away from people, is having these like true human interactions, experiences. Like, Jeff Bezos isn't going to let me pet his cats.
Right.
When I get laid off.
He's not going to let me touch Lauren Sanchez's boobies.
Definitely not. If I said, please, it'll make me feel better.
She says
Over
they're
the
real.
Shirt. Come on.
I just got to touch them.
Come on, let me just look at them.
Why are they there?
Mark looked at them. Come on. All right, you ready to wrap it there?
Let's wrap it. All right.
right.
Good work.
Bye, guys. We'll see you next week.